Welcome to my podcast, Love and Courageous. I'm your host, Demetrius. And on today's episode, I'll be speaking about the child labor law that Florida is trying to pass. Now, this year, the legislature has filed a SB 918 and HB 1225 employment of minors. The proposed rollbacks to child labor laws would pose a greater risk to the health and well-being of younger people. Now, if the law is passed, the SB 918 would allow employers to schedule 16 and 17-year-olds for limited hours and days without breaks, and schedule 14 and 15-year-olds who are home or virtual school students for unlimited hours and days without breaks during the school year. The HB 1225 is similar. The only difference is that it will schedule 16 and 17-year-olds for limited days without breaks. Now, here are a few issues with these bills. It will reverse the long-held child labor protection for the younger generation. Florida's Department of Education, Department of Business and Professional Regulation, also known as DPPR, emphasized that the state's current child labor laws are meant to protect children's health, workplace, education, and welfare. But these two bills would undo decades of these vital protections for younger children, catalyzing increased exploitation of youth workers. Now, Florida laws governing children's work hours has changed numerous times since they were first enacted back in 1913. The first time the state lawmakers changed the hours children could work was back in 1986. Extending the curfew and ban on working more than 6 days in a row to the kids who were 17 years old and younger. Now, before this, the law only shielded children who was age 15 and younger. Also, if these bills are passed, it would impact over 110,000 of young kids in Florida. The HB 1225 and SB 918 will impact all kids from the age of 14 to 17 years old in the labor force. Workforce data is most reliable and available for those of age 15 to 17. So estimates cannot be provided for 14-year-olds. Based on teamwork trends, FPI estimate that 111,311 of those teens are in the labor force and could be directly impacted by the bill. This includes 95,194 teenagers who are currently employed, which makes up 86% of 15 to 17-year-olds in Florida labor force. Now, these bills passed, they will remove nearly every state guardrail that helps ensure younger kids are not too exhausted to perform well in school and other activities. If employers are no longer required to consider school schedules, this will leave teenagers who are thriving to complete school while holding down a job with an unfair choice, accept the hours their boss schedules them, and put themselves at risk academically, or lose their job and the money and experience that comes with it. Youth living in poverty and immigrants without a documented status would be especially unlikely to view quitting as a viable option. Working excessive hours, which is over 20 hours per week, and teenagers remain a high risk factor for poor grades and dropping out of high school. School absence in Florida remains at its second highest level in 15 years. Between the academic year 2021 and 2022, it had a rate of 20.9%. Now, in 2023 and 2024 academic year, the data does shows an improvement, but however, 1 in 5 students remain chronically absent throughout the state, which makes up 19.9%. Most of the state's 67 counties had chronic absent rates over 20%. That is more than 1 in 5 of those counties. Students were absent 21 or more days of the school year. In other counties, the absent rate has skyrocketed above 35%. An imbalance between work and school can lead up to having a lifelong economic consequences. Young teenagers without a high school diploma are paid the least and are more likely to face unemployment than other workers. Now, child labor is nothing new in America, especially when it comes to slavery, but even after. Child labor existed in America until the 1930s. It was very common during the American Industrial Revolution. Industrialization attracted workers and their families from farms and rural areas into urban areas and factory work. In factories and mines, children were often prepared as employees because owners viewed them as more manageable, cheaper, and less likely to strike. American children worked in large numbers in mines, agriculture, glass factories, textiles, home industries, messengers, peddlers, and more. Later on in the 19th century, a lot of labor unions and social reformers advocated for state and local legislation to prevent extreme child labor. By 1900, it resulted in state and local legislation designed to prevent extreme child labor. However, the condition in states varied considerably on whether they had child labor standards, their content, and the degree of enforcement. Some kids swept the trash and filth from city streets or stood for hours on street corners, and other ones worked constantly through 10-hour shifts in the dark, damp, cold mines and sweated to the point of dehydration. A lot of child laborers were children from poor parents or recent immigrants who depended on their children's wages to survive. In 1870, the first U.S. census to report child labor numbers counted 750,000 workers under the age of 15, not including the kids who was working for their families on farms or in businesses. By 1911, more than 2 million kids under the age of 16 were working 12 hours or more and 6 days out the week. And a lot of times they were pushed in unhealthy and hazardous conditions. Since 1900, there has been a lot of efforts to regulate and eliminate child labor. One of the leaders in this effort was the National Child Labor Committee, which was organized in 1904. The National Child Labor Committee and various state child labor committees were gradualists in philosophy, preparing them to accept whatever was achievable, even if it was not sufficient. They used flexible tactics and were resilient in the face of defeat and slow progress. These committees pioneered the usage of mass political action, including expert investigation, photography, mass mailings, and lobbying. The National Child Labor Committee campaigned for tougher state and federal laws against the abuses of industrial child labor. Between 1902 and 1915, the committees emphasized reform through state legislatures and ended up resulting in many laws restricting child labor. Now, however, there were still issues remaining, especially in the South. This led to a push for federal child labor laws, which Congress passed in 1916 and 1918. But the Supreme Court declared both of them unconstitutional. Opponents of child labor then sought a constitutional amendment to authorize federal child labor legislation. Congress passed the amendment in 1924, but a lot of states still failed to ratify this amendment due to the conservative 1920s political climate and opposition from some church groups and farm organizations that feared increased federal power. The Great Depression catalyzed changes in political attitudes, especially surrounding child labor. President Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal sought to prevent extreme child labor. And almost all of the codes under the National Industrial Recovery Act reduced child labor. The Public Contracts Act of 1936 required boys to be 16 and girls to be 18 to work in firms supplying goods under federal contract. The Beet Sugar Act required children to be 14 years old to work in cultivating and harvesting sugar beets and cane. Now, the Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938 set the minimum working age at 14 for employment outside of school hours and 16 during school hours. Non-agricultural work in interstate commerce require a minimum age of 16 during school hours and 18 for positions designated as hazardous by the Secretary of Labor. Now, that's all the information I have, but I will say this is that one, all this is that they're trying to bring slavery back. That's all this is about. Because honestly, the fact that when it comes to slavery, you know, Black people, we were kidnapped and human sex trafficked over here. We were forced to do hard labor. And even the kids during slavery. And so it's like, I think it's just so ironic how they are deporting a lot of like the Latinos and stuff. And when Trump said they taking the Black jobs, because you know a lot of them work in agriculture. They work in a lot of other places as well, but agriculture is one of them. And I'm like, another thing is that they're trying to they're trying to get rid of the Department of Education, and I just think it's so freaking ironic how y'all doing all these things, and then you got Florida talking about passing the child labor law. So it's like, okay, I think this crap is pretty funny. Like, they think they slick. Because honestly, one thing is this. A lot of these jobs out here already don't pay people well. Hey, you got some people out here with degrees that still get underpaid. But when you're talking about making kids literally work instead of going to school, getting the education, you want them to be slaves. That's all they want to do. They're trying to control their life because, first of all, who in the world do I look like working stupid minimum freaking wage? I mean, I was doing that when I was in high school and college. What the heck you think I got a degree for, man? These kids are going to be literally working under wage. And not only that, with the cost of living, they're not going to be able to afford anything. They're going to remain in poverty. That's literally what's going to freaking happen. And so honestly, like, for people out there that got kids, look, you gotta make sure that your kids stay in school. Because sadly, a lot of those kids that are going to be working when they really should be in school, they're not going to keep track of those kids. They're not going to. So I just think it's funny. They're cutting the Department of Education. So basically, people will not be able to, get loans or anything to go to school. If you're not going to school, then you're just going to work. I said, you know what? This don't make no dang on sense. But I think it's funny because you got some white people that agree with this because they know what he's trying to do. But here's the thing, though. These white people about to be in the motherfucking field. I don't know who the hell they think they are, but no, honey. You can get your little races behind in the field because I'm not getting in the field. I will literally become a motherfucking YouTuber first before I ever get my ass in the motherfucking field. I mean, thank God I got my degree, but still. Like, God forbid, if I was ever to lose my dang on job, hell nah, bro, I'm going straight to YouTube. You got me bent. Like, I ain't going to no motherfucking field. But since these white people want to encourage it, okay, guess what? Put your kid in the field. That's what you do. And I don't want to hear no motherfucking complaining. Because they sure ain't complaining when it was black people in the field. So hell nah, put your kid out in the motherfucking field then. But I hope to the black people out there, keep your kids in school. Keep them in school. Because I ain't trying to be funny. It would not surprise me if they pass these bills. It would not surprise me. But also, for anybody that chooses to put their kids out there, just know, I'm tell you right now, you probably ain't gonna see that kid no more. I'm not even trying to be funny. Some of those kids will go missing. Some of them will be human trafficked. Literally. They will not be treated with any type of respect at all. Because the thing is that people don't realize during slavery, the black kids, they were human trafficked. That's the thing a lot of people don't realize. Like, they did that to black kids. And those parents did not see their kids at all because they were in different states. That is all for the topic, and now I'm going to get into the Black History Fact. So, the Black History Fact will be about Lake Martin. Before Lake Martin was created, it used to be a black community called Collage, located in Alabama, nestled along the shores of Lake Martin in Tallapoosa County. Collage was founded by a former slave named John Jackson Benson. Benson earned $100 from his work in coal mines. He used the $100 to purchase a portion of the land he was enslaved on. After purchasing the land, he worked the land until it yielded a profit. Then he used the profit to buy more land. He repeated the process until he owned 3,000 acres of the land. He then built a farmhouse, cotton gin, grist mill, sawmill, brickyard, and school, helping Collage to grow into a community that housed black and white families. John Benson's son, William Benson, was the founding president of the Dixie Industrial Company, the first black-owned railroad. The Dixie Industrial Company was able to succeed by exporting lumber to Europe. The company lost financial control due to their exporting ports being closed because of World War II, and Benson was replaced as president by the company's largest stockholder. The matter was taken to court, but the Dixie Industrial Company was eventually lost. The area around Lake Martin has been inhabited for centuries, with evidence of Native American settlements dating back thousands of years ago. The Creek Indians, in particular, were prominent in the region before white people came over and colonized the country. Collage is believed to have Native American origins, possibly derived from Creek or other indigenous languages. Collage's modern history began with the construction of Martin Dam on the Tallapoosa River back in 1926. The Martin Dam was constructed by the Alabama Power Company to generate hydroelectric power. The dam created Lake Martin, one of the largest man-made lakes in America. Lake Martin brought significant changes to the region. One of the biggest changes was the closing of the Collage community. The residents of the community were displaced by the building of the Martin Dam and the financial troubles that were caused by the exporting ports being closed. Once the Martin Dam was completed, the flow of water from the dam flooded the community of Collage, leaving another black-owned community underwater. Once dominated by a bustling black-owned community, forest and farmland, the shoreline became dotted with homes, communities, and resorts, creating the current Collage community. The gem of the original Collage community was its Collage Academy and Industrial Institute, better known as the Collage Industrial School, founded around 1895. The school became a prominent academic center for black people, and Booker T. Washington even served on the board of trustees. Hundreds of black people were able to be educated until the closing of the school. John Jackson Benson and his son William Benson and others helped to establish and grow the Collage community until the residents were forced out of the community and the area was flooded to create Lake Martin. So that is all for today. Thank you everyone for listening to my podcast, and I hope you all have a lovely day.